Hey, it's Ranger Russ. I am here at Hammonasset. I want to remind everyone that unfortunately the Meigs Point Nature Center is closed, but we are doing these programs every day at 11 and 2 o'clock. Make sure you tune in and you'll see me do something live. The 2 o'clock ones I'll be out in the field like I am today, and then the 1 o'clocks we will be doing a live animal. So, before we get into the plant I'm going to be talking about, I need to remind everyone you can come to state parks, but you really need to keep social distance. Even though you think you're out in the air, it's all fine, you still have to stay 6 feet away at all times. Make sure that you're coughing completely into your elbow. Cover your mouth completely when you cough. And you want to not touch your face and wash your hands regularly, okay? These are all things that we can do to help keep each other safe. Okay, what we're talking about today is another invasive species. So I've mentioned a few times that an invasive species, there's really two requirements for an invasive species. The first is that it's not native to the area. And in this case, the invader is a plant. The second thing is that it's going to be harmful to the environment. So we'll talk about how this plant harms the environment where we find it growing. And the plant we're talking about is Phragmites, or common reed. These plants are found all over the coast of Connecticut. They're all over the US. These are from Europe and Asia. They're not from this area. There is a native Phragmites. It's very, very difficult to find. Now, how does Phragmites hurt the environment where it's introduced? Well, the first thing that it does is Phragmites grows in wet areas, but it doesn't like completely wet areas. It won't grow in the water. So it has a very solid root mass, and it will build that root mass up higher and higher to get it up out of being completely submerged all the time. So it can turn a freshwater pond into a field. So it can change a habitat. That's not good for the plants and animals that live in that freshwater pond. Another thing that Phragmites does, it will grow on the edges of salt marshes, but it doesn't like a lot of salt water. It really prefers fresh water. So any place that we have runoff from a road, a parking lot, where fresh water is running into a saltwater marsh, the Phragmites is going to grow there. It's going to grow first there, and then it will gradually spread out. It won't go completely into the salt water, but again, it's building its root mass up so that it can grow further and further out into a salt marsh. Okay, so why is that harmful to the environment? The seeds, you can look at the seeds here of Phragmites. There is no nutritional value here for any of the animals in Connecticut. So birds that eat seeds regularly from Connecticut are not able to eat these seeds. And when this plant grows and replaces the plants that are supposed to grow here, they're taking away a food source for our native animals. Birds, rodents, they all like to eat seeds, and you're losing that seed food source. Okay, so we really don't want to have these. Another thing that they do, Phragmites grows very tall. Many of the birds that nest in salt marshes nest low to the ground. Phragmites grows so tall, they're not able to nest where they want to nest, so they stay away from Phragmites, which is another thing. It's taking away a nesting place for some of our native birds. Now, if you look, the Phragmites here, it's growing, it gets pretty tall, and it's growing out. Eventually, it's going to creep further and further out. There's some native cordgrass down there. The Phragmites is going to continue to grow further and further until it takes over. This entire area will be taken over by just Phragmites. How did Phragmites get here? Unfortunately, we don't know how it got here. It is very likely and most likely that man had something to do with the way it got here. This could have been an ornamental. It does have a beautiful plume there, so people think, oh, that would be a nice plant to have in their yards or around their homes. People felt the same way years ago before we really knew about invasive species. So they spread plants all around the world because they looked pretty. So this could have been how it got here. Also, the seeds could have been mixed in with a seed crop. When we were transporting seeds or grains, a few of these could have gotten mixed in, again, causing harm. And then the last possibility, which I think most people think that's the most likely scenario, is that years ago we used to use straw to pack crates when we were shipping goods back and forth from Asia to Europe and to the US. This would have made a great packing material. So they would have cut down the Phragmites, shoved it into the crates, put in your glass or whatever it is that's fragile that you wanted to protect. Then it comes to the new area. When they unpack the crate, they take their goods out, and what do you do with all the straw? You just toss it out. The seeds are able to disperse. It finds a very nice habitat to grow. It can outcompete the local species, and it becomes an invasive species. So those are the ways that it could have gotten here. I don't think anyone really knows for sure how we ended up with Phragmites in this area. Okay, I think it's time to do a few questions. So what can we do to stop the spread? That's a very good question. That's the first thing that we should think about, is what we can do. And there are a few things. The first thing, the best way to control Phragmites is mechanical, and that's by mowing it or cutting it down by hand. It will grow back eventually, but it gives the local species, the native species, an opportunity to grow. And that's what we want to do. We want to create that opportunity for the species that belong there to grow there. The DEEP does a spraying program where they will spray Phragmites. It has limited success. My understanding is that after they spray an area, they still go through and mow it. That gives the native plants an opportunity to grow, but they still have to go back every 7 to 9 years and do it again. The Phragmites just keeps coming back. So we're trying to do as many areas. And one of the things with invasives, when you're mowing them or spraying them, whatever control you're doing, you want to make sure that you're only killing the invasives. So if there are 50% invasive and 50% native, we don't touch that area. We will wait till it's over 90% invasive before we're going to mow or spray it. Do we have any other good questions out there? Someone is asking if it's related to wheat. This is not in the wheat family. This is a reed. It's not a grain that's useful to people. We can't turn it into something that we would want to eat. Where will you see them most? Mostly you're going to see them on the edges of salt marshes, and they can grow really thick on the edge of a salt marsh, or in fresh water. So they do prefer fresh water over salt water, but you can find them in both environments. Sam is wondering if they need a lot of water. They do like water, so yes, they do need a lot of water. They're not going to grow in a field or any area that's even dry a little bit. They like to be by the water, so they do like the water.
What's more of a concern, Phragmites or mile-a-minute?
That's a good question, and I would say in this area, in Connecticut, which is where I'm talking to you from, the Phragmites is more of a concern. We've had a problem with it much longer than mile-a-minute weed. Mile-a-minute weed is in Connecticut, but it's not as extreme or widespread as Phragmites. And let's take this time to say, we're coming to you from Hammonasset Beach State Park in Connecticut. If you're from out of Connecticut or anywhere in the world, please give us a little note there saying where you're listening from. And make sure you like us and follow us, and that way everyone that you know will see this great resource that we have offering while you are all in quarantine. What else do we have here? Stafford Springs is messaging us. Okay, so again, if you go to meigspointnaturecenter.org, you'll have a great opportunity to see these videos, all the videos we've done. We'll have vocabulary lists that go along with it. And on Fridays, we try and put up some extra content, something special, some activity. Now, we do have Easter coming up this weekend, so I think what we're going to try and do is a virtual Easter egg hunt. So for anybody that wants to search for Easter eggs, we're going to do a little video along a trail, and you can see how many of those eggs you can spot, and we might even come up with some prizes. So make sure you continue to follow us. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to see them. I also challenge you to see if you can find an invasive species in an area where you're walking. And draw a picture, take a note, take a picture, and send it to us, and let's talk about the invasives that you have in your area. All right, thank you very much for tuning in. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, we're going to have another live animal program. Sorry, 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock is the live animal. 2 o'clock, we're going to be outside again tomorrow in another part of Hammonasset Beach State Park.